welcome to Sniper's Rest. Sniper's Rest is the last best rest stop in the here and there, the place between where you're coming from and where you're going. I am Sniper Shadow and I reside here in Sniper's Rest as a guide and a custodian to those who pass through here. I visit the worlds within the multiverse often, but I am always here to guide and care for travellers, such as yourself, that pass through the here and there. Welcome, my friend. Frank. Goodness gracious, Frank, put him down. Excuse me a moment, my friend. Frank, you put him down. I know he ate your carrot. That's no excuse to manhandle Bulbasaur. I will stop it. Do you want me to fix it, or do you want to go outside? I will get you both one. Apologize, Frank. Frank. Good. Now play nicely. I'm sorry about that. I swear, it's like having 2 extra children. As always, please take a rest here before continuing your journey. Today, we continue reading the series of short stories by H.P. Lovecraft. This particular tale was written in 1920 and is entitled Facts Concerning the Late Arthur Jermyn and His Family. Let's explore this tainted web of ancestry together. Life is a hideous thing, and from the background behind what we know of it peer demonical hints of truth which make it sometimes 1,000-fold more hideous. Science, already oppressive with its shocking revelations, will perhaps be the ultimate exterminator of our human species, if separate species we be, for its reserve of unguessed horrors could never be borne by mortal brains if loosed upon the world. If we knew what we are, we should do as Sir Arthur Jermyn did. And Arthur Jermyn soaked himself in oil and set fire to his clothing one night. No one placed the charred fragments in an urn or set a memorial to him who had been, for certain pages and a certain boxed object were found, which made men wish to forget. Some who knew him do not admit that he ever existed. Arthur Jermyn went out on the moor and burned himself after seeing the boxed object, which had come from Africa. It was this object, and not his peculiar personal appearance, which made him end his life. Many would have disliked to live if possessed by the peculiar features of Arthur Jermyn, but he had been a good poet and a scholar, and had not minded. Learning was in his blood, and for his great-grandfather, Sir Robert Jermyn, had been an anthropologist of note, whilst his great-great-great-grandfather, Sir Wade Jermyn, was one of the earliest explorers of the Congo region, and had written of its tribes, animals, and supposed antiquities. Indeed, old Sir Wade had possessed an intellectual zeal amounting almost to a mania, his bizarre conjectures on a prehistoric civilization earning him much ridicule when his book's Observations on the Several Parts of Africa was published. In 1765, this fearless explorer had been placed in a madhouse at Huntington. Madness was in all the Germans, and people were glad there were not many of them. The line put forth no branches, and Arthur was the last of it. If he had not been, one cannot say what he would have done when the object came. The Germans had never seemed to look quite right. Something was amiss, though Arthur was the worst. And the old family portraits in the German house shewed fine faces enough before Sir Wade's time. Certainly, the madness began with Sir Wade, whose wild stories of Africa were at once the delight and terror of his few friends. It shewed his collection of trophies and specimens, which were not such as normal man would accumulate and preserve, and appeared strikingly in the oriental seclusion in which he kept his wife. The latter, he had said, was the daughter of a Portuguese trader whom he had met in Africa, and did not like the English ways. She, with an infant son born in Africa, had accompanied him back from the second and longest of his trips, and had gone with him on his third and last, never returning. No one had ever seen her closely, not even the servants, for her disposition had been violent and singular. During her brief stay at the Jermyn house, she occupied a remote wing and was waited on by her husband alone. Sir Wade was, indeed, most peculiar in his solicitude for his family. For when he returned to Africa, he would permit no one to care for his young son, save one loathsome woman from Guinea. Upon coming back, after the death of Lady Jermyn, he himself assumed complete care of the boy. But it was the talk of Sir Wade, especially when his cups, which chiefly led his friends to deem him mad. In a rational age like the 18th century, it was unwise for a man of learning to talk about wild sights and strange scenes under a Congo moon, of the gigantic walls and pillars of a forgotten city, crumbling and vine-grown, and of damp and silent stone steps leading intermittently down into the darkness, of abysmal treasure vaults and inconceivable catacombs. Especially was it unwise to rave of living things that might haunt such place, of creatures half of the jungle and half of the aged city, fabulous creatures which even an author might describe with skepticism. Things that might have sprung up after the great apes had overrun the dying city with the walls and the pillars, the vaults and the weird carvings. Yet, after he came home from the last time, Sir Wade would speak of such matters with a shudderingly uncanny zest. Mostly after his third glass at the Knight's Head, boasting of what he had found in the jungle and how he had dwelt among the terrible ruins known only to him. And finally he had spoken of the living things in such a manner that he was taken to the madhouse. He had shewn little regret when shut into the barred room in Huntington, for his mind moved curiously. Ever since his son had commenced to grow out of infancy, he had liked his home less and less, till at last he seemed to dread it. The Knight's Head had been his headquarters, and when he was confined, he expressed some vague gratitude for it, as if it was some kind of protection. 3 years later, he died. Wade Jermyn's son, Philip, was a highly peculiar person. Despite a strong physical resemblance to his father, his appearance and conduct were in many particulars so coarse that he was universally shunned. Though he did not inherit the madness which was feared by some, he was densely stupid and given to brief periods of uncontrollable violence. In frame he was small, but intensely powerful, and was incredibly agile. 12 years after succeeding his title, he married the daughter of his gameskeeper, a person said to be of gypsy extraction, but before his son was born joined the navy as a common sailor, completing the general disgust which his habits had begun. After the close of the American War, he was heard of as a sailor on a merchantman in the Africa trade, having a kind of reputation for feats of strength and climbing, but finally disappearing one night as the ship lay off the Congo coast. In the son of Sir Philip Jermyn, now the accepted family peculiarity, took a strange and fatal turn. Tall and fairly handsome, with a sort of weird Eastern grace, despite certain slight oddities of proportion, Robert Jermyn began a life as a scholar and an investigator. It was he who first studied scientifically in the vast collection of relics which his mad grandfather had brought from Africa, who made the family name as celebrated in ethology as in exploration. In 1815, Sir Robert married the daughter of the 7th Viscount Brightholme, and was subsequently blessed with 3 children, the eldest and youngest of whom were never publicly seen on account of deformities in mind and body. Saddened by these family misfortunes, the scientist sought relief in work and made 2 long expeditions in the interior of Africa. In 1849, his second son, Neville, a singularly repellent person who seemed to combine the surliness of Philip Jermyn with the hauteur of the Brightholmes, ran away with a vulgar dancer, but was pardoned upon his return the following year. He came back to the Jermyn house a widower with an infant son, Alfred, who was day one to be the father of Arthur Jermyn. Friends said that it was this series of griefs which unhinged the mind of Sir Robert Jermyn, yet it was probably merely a bit of African folklore which caused the disaster. The elderly scholar had been collecting legends of the Onaga tribes near the field of his grandfathers and his own explorations, hoping in some way to account for Sir Wade's wild tales of a lost city peopled by strange hybrid creatures. A certain consistency in the strange papers of his ancestor suggested that the madman's imagination might have been stimulated by native myths. On October 19, 1852, the explorer Samuel Seton called at the Jermyn house with a manuscript of notes collected among the Onagas, believing that certain legends of a grey city of white apes ruled by a white god might prove valuable to the ethnologist. In his conversation, he probably supplied many additional details, the nature of which will never be known, since a hideous series of tragedies suddenly burst into being. When Sir Robert Jermyn emerged from his library, he left behind the strangled corpse of the explorer, and before he could be restrained, had put an end to all 3 of his children, the 2 who were never seen, and the son who had run away. Neville Jermyn died in the successful defence of his own 2-year-old son, who had apparently been included in the old man's madly murderous scheme. Sir Robert himself, after repeated attempts at suicide and a stubborn refusal to utter any articulate sound, died of apoplexy in the 2nd year of his confinement. Sir Alfred Jermyn was a baronet before his 4th birthday, but his tastes never matched his title. At 20, he had joined a band of music hall performers, and at 36 deserted his wife and child to travel with an American circus. His end was very revolting. Among the animals in the exhibition which he travelled was a huge bull gorilla of lighter colour than the average, a surprisingly traceable beast of much popularity with performance. With this gorilla, Alfred Jermyn was singularly fascinated, and on many occasions the 2 would each eye each other for long periods of time, though through the intervening bars. Eventually, Jermyn asked and obtained permission to train the animal, astonishing audiences and fellow performers alike with success. One morning in Chicago, as the gorilla and Alfred Jermyn were rehearsing an exceedingly clever boxing match, the former delivered a blow of more than usual force, hurting both the body and the dignity of the amateur trainer. Of what followed, members of the greatest show on earth do not like to speak. They did not expect to hear Sir Alfred Jermyn emit a shrill, ill-human scream, or to see him seize his clumsy antagonist with both hands, dash it to the floor of the cage, and bite fiendishly at its hairy throat. The gorilla was off its guard, but not for long, and before anything could be done by a regular trainer, the body which had belonged to a baronet was past recognition. Arthur Jermyn was the son of Sir Alfred Jermyn, and a music hall singer of unknown origin. When the husband and father deserted his family, the mother took the child to the Jermyn house, where there was none left to object to her presence. She was not without notions of what a nobleman's dignity should be, and she saw it to her son receive the best education which limited money could provide. The family resources were now sadly slender, and the Jermyn house had fallen into woeful disrepair. but young Arthur loved the old edifice and all of its contents. He was not like any other Jermyn who had ever lived, for he was a poet and a dreamer. Some of the neighbouring families, who had heard tales of old Sir Wade Jermyn's unseen Portuguese wife, declared that her Latin blood must be shewing itself. But most persons merely sneered at his sensitiveness to beauty, attributing it to his music-hall mother, who was socially unrecognised. The poetic delicacy of Arthur Jermyn was the more remarkable because of his uncouth personal appearance. Most of the Jermyns had possessed a subtly odd and repellent cast, but Arthur's case was very striking. It is hard to say just what he had resembled, but his expression, his facial angle, and the length of his arms gave a thrill repulsion to those who met him for the first time. It was the mind and character of Arthur Jermyn which atoned for his aspect. Gifted and learned, he took the highest honours at Oxford, and seemed likely to redeem the intellectual fame of his family. Though of poetic rather than scientific temperament, he planned to continue the work of his forefathers in African ethnology and antiquities, utilizing the truly wonderful though strange collection of Sir Wade. With his fanciful mind, he thought often of the prehistoric civilization which the mad explorer had so implicitly believed, and would weave tale after tale about the silent jungle city mentioned in the latter's wilder notes and paragraphs. For the nebulous utterances concerning a nameless, unsuspected race of jungle hybrids, he had a particular feeling of mingled terror and attraction, speculating on the possible basis of such fancy and seeking to obtain light amongst the more recent data gleaned by his great-grandfather and Samuel Seton amongst the Onagas. In 1911, after the death of his mother, Sir Arthur Jermyn determined to pursue his investigations to the utmost extent. Selling a portion of his estate to obtain the requisite money, he outfitted an expedition and sailed for the Congo. Arranging with the Belgian authorities for a party of guides, he spent a year in the Onega and Kalurugri country, finding data beyond the highest of his expectations. Among the Kalgiris, an aged chief called Mwanu, who possessed not only a highly retentive memory, but a singular degree of intelligence and interest in old legends. This ancient confirmed every tale which Jermyn had heard, adding his own account of the stone city and the white apes as it had been told to him. According to Mwanu, the grey city and the hybrid creatures were no more, having been annihilated by the warlike Nabangas many years ago. This tribe, after destroying most of the edifices and killing the live beings, had carried off the stuffed goddess which had been the object of their quest, the white ape goddess which the strange beings worshipped, and which was held by Congo tradition to be the form of one who had reigned as a princess among whose beings. Just what the white ape-like creatures could have been, Mwanu had no idea. But he thought that they were the builders of the ruined city. Jermyn could form no conjecture, but by close questioning obtained a very picturesque legend of the stuffed goddess. The ape princess, it was said, became the consort of a great white god who had come out of the west. For a long time they had reigned over the city together, but when they had a son, all three went away. Later, the god and the princess had returned, but upon the death of the princess, her divine husband had mummified the body and enshrined it in a vast house of stone, where it was worshipped. Then he had departed alone. The legend here seems to present three variants. According to one story, nothing further happened save that the stuffed goddess became a symbol of supremacy for whatever tribe might possess it. It was for this reason the Nabangas carried it off. A second story told of the god's return and the death at the feet of his enshrined wife. A third told of the return of the son, grown into manhood or apehood or godhood, as the case might be. Yet, unconscious of his identity, surely the imaginative folk had made the most of whatever events might lie behind the extravagant legendary. Of the reality of the jungle city described by old Sir Wade, Arthur Jermyn had no further doubt, and was hardly astonished when, in early 1912, he came upon what was left of it. Its size must have been exaggerated, yet the stones lying about proved that it was no mere village. Unfortunately, no carvings could be found, and the small size of the expedition prevented operations towards clearing one of the visible passageways that seemed to lead down into a system of vaults which Sir Wade had mentioned. The white apes and the stuffed goddess were discussed with all of the native chiefs of the region, but it remained for a European to improve on the data offered by old Manu M. Verheeren. Belgian agent at a trading post on the Congo, believed he could not only locate but obtain the stuffed goddess, of which he had vaguely heard, since the once mighty Namangus were now a submissive servant of King Albert's government, and with but little persuasion could be induced to part with the gruesome deity that they had carried off. While Jermyn sailed for England, therefore, it was with exultant probability that he would in a few months receive a priceless ethnological relic confirming the wildest of his great-great-great-grandfather's narratives. That is, the wildest which he had never heard. Countrymen near Jermyn House had perhaps heard wilder tales handed down from ancestors who had listened to Sir Wade round the tables at the Knighthead. Arthur Jermyn waited very patiently for the expected box from M. Verheeren, meanwhile studying with increased diligency the manuscript left by his mad ancestor. He began to feel closely akin to Sir Wade, and to seek relics of the latter personal life in England as well as of his African exploits. Oral accounts of the mysterious and secluded wife had been numerous, but no tangible relic of her stay at the Jermyn house remained. Jermyn wondered what circumstance had prompted or permitted such an effacement, and decided that the husband's insanity was probably the prime cause. His great-great-great-grandmother, he recalled, was said to have been the daughter of a Portuguese trader in Africa. No doubt her practical heritage and superficial knowledge of the Dark Continent had caused her to flout Sir Wade's talk of the interior, a thing which such a man would not be likely to forgive. But she had died in Africa, perhaps dragged thither by her husband determined to prove what he had told. But as Jermyn indulged in these reflections, he could not but smile at their futility, a century and a half after the deaths of both these strange protagonists. In June 1913, a letter arrived from N. Verheeren telling of the finding of the stuffed goddess. It was, the Belgian averred, the most extraordinary object. An object quite beyond the power of a layman to classify. Whether it was human or simian, only a scientist could determine, and the process of determination would be greatly hampered by its imperfect condition. Time and the Congo climate are not kind to mummies, especially when their preparation is as amateurish as it seemed to be the case here. Around the creature's neck had been found a golden chain bearing an empty locket on which were armorial designs, no doubt some hapless traveller's keepsake, taken by the Nabangus and hung upon the goddess as a charm. In commenting on the contour of the mummy's face, M. Verheeren suggested a whimsical comparison, or rather expressed a humorous wonder as to how it would strike his correspondents, but was too much interested in this scientifically to waste many words in the levity. The stuffed goddess, he wrote, would arrive duly packed about a month after receipt of the letter. The boxed object was delivered at the Jermyn house on the afternoon of August 3, 1913, being conveyed immediately to a large chamber which housed the collection of African specimens, as arranged by Sir Robert and Arthur. What ensued can best be gathered from the tales of servants and from the things and papers later examined. of the various tales of age summans, the family butler is most ample and coherent. According to this trustworthy man, Sir Arthur Jermyn dismissed everyone from the room before opening the box, though the instant sound of the hammer and chisel shewed that he did not delay in the operation. Nothing was heard for some time. Just how long, summons cannot exactly estimate, but it was certainly less than a quarter of an hour that the horrible scream, undoubtedly in Jermyn's voice, was heard. Immediately afterwards, Jermyn emerged from the room, rushing frantically towards the front of the house as if pursued by some hideous enemy. The expression on his face, a face ghastly enough in response, was beyond description. Whether near the front door, he seemed to think of something and turned back in his flight, finally disappearing down the stairs to the cellar. Most servants were utterly dumbfounded and watched at the head of the stairs, but their master did not return. The smell of oil was all that came up from the regions below. After a dark rattling was heard at the door leading from the cellar to the courtyard, and a stable boy saw Arthur Jermyn, glistening from head to foot with oil, steal furtively out and vanish on the black moor surrounding the house. Then, in an exhalation of supreme horror, everyone saw the end. A spark appeared on the moor, a flame arose, and a pillar of human fire reached to the heavens. The house of Jermyn no longer existed. The reason why Arthur Jermyn charred fragments were not collected and buried lies in what was found afterwards. Principally, the thing in the box. The stuffed goddess was a nauseous sight, withered and eaten away, but it was clearly a mummified white ape of some unknown species, less hairy than any recorded variety, and infinitely nearer to mankind. Quite shockingly so. Detailed description would be rather unpleasant, but two salient peculiars must be told, for they fit in revoltingly with the certain notes of Sir Wade Jermyn's African expeditions, with the Congolese legends of White God and the Ape Princess. The two peculiars in question are these. The arms on the golden locket about the creature's neck were in fact the Jermyn arms, and the jocose suggestion of M. Verhaeren about a certain resemblance as connected with the shriveled face, applied with vivid and ghastly and unnatural horror to none other than the sensitive Arthur Jermyn, great-great-great-grandson of Sir Wade Jermyn, and an unknown wife. Members of the Royal Anthropological Institute burned the thing and threw the locket into a well, and some of them do not admit that Arthur Jermyn ever existed. That concludes our tale for this week, my friend. Please return next week and we will continue with another short story by H.P. Lovecraft. If you wish to rest some more, please find a space that suits you, whether you curl up by the fire, partake in some food and beverages in our kitchen, take a nap in one of our many rooms, or take a stroll around the garden. Please know you are always welcome at Sniper's Rest, my friend. If you are continuing your journey, the multiverse has loads of exciting places for you to visit this week. To the north, I was already short and angry. It didn't take me much more to be in this universe. Did I mention there's guns? And space. And we're badasses. Come hang out, okay? To the west. So, you've found yourself in a parallel universe. New faces and familiar ones. Oh, no, not him. He's busy at the moment. Sorry. Battle your way through all the usual chaos. All in a day's work, right? Probably. To the east. Hi, here's your kit. Don't worry, there's a cross, an attempt gauge. Oh, and how do you feel about demons? Not great? Okay, don't worry. There's a guidebook. You guys have totally got this. And if the lights start getting all, flashy and stuff, probably find yourself the nearest closet. Most of them can't get you in there. It's fine. Just look for clues and be ready to run. No worries. And if you're making your own way out there, good luck, my friend, wherever you end up, wherever you come from, and wherever you're going. Thank you for spending some time here with us at Sniper's Rest. Remember to take care of yourself, be kind to others, hydrate, take a moment to look out into the world and marvel at how incredible it all is. How incredible you are, friend. Until next time, please take care on your way.